Welcome to the West Coast mainline for Train Sim World 5. I'm making this video because, as usual, the in-game tutorials are missing a ton of necessary detail. When you start a service in timetable mode, there are all kinds of features isolated that the in-game tutorials don't even mention. So let's begin the tutorial starting with the Class 390 Pendolino. So we're in the cab at the start of a timetable service. First we'll look to our left where the power brake controller is and we'll insert the master key. Let's switch the reverser to neutral, which activates a lot of the train systems. Switches to open the doors are on the left and right side of the cab. We'll open the doors on the right facing the platform. If anyone from Dovetail is watching this, on my alt channel I do have a tutorial for how to add a nav mesh in Unreal Engine 5 for NPCs. Anyway, back to the trains. On the back wall of the cab are isolator switches for safety systems. We'll activate AWS to alert us to adverse signals, speed limit changes and route changes ahead. The alarm sounds like this. You'll need to acknowledge it with Q on PC or B on Xbox. Next, I'll activate the driver vigilance device. If you don't touch the power brake controller for a certain period of time, this alarm will sound. And just acknowledge it the same way as you would the AWS. And just for completeness, we'll activate the driver safety device. Essentially, if you leave the seat, it will sound an alarm. One final step before returning to the seat: on the fuse box above the isolator panel, just flick the AWS fuse. And as you get back in the seat, just hit the AWS acknowledge to silence the alarm. Okay, let's move the reverser forward. We'll acknowledge the tilt system self-test with the AWS acknowledge key. This alarm sounds twice, so when it sounds again, just press AWS acknowledge for a second time. We'll set the train lights to day running or night running depending on the time of day. When you're ready to depart, we'll press the door close button on the left or right side of the panel. Check for the door interlock light before departing. The Pendolino has a combined power brake controller with 6 brake positions and 4 power positions. To move the train, set this controller to one of the power notches. There are a couple more features unique to the Pendolino which I'm going to explain now. The first of these is the cruise controller or the speed set mode. To hold your current speed, just press this button or press Ctrl R on a PC. You can toggle it on and off with that button or move the power brake handle to a brake position to disengage. The Pendolino's unique tilt feature allows it to travel at a higher speed than other trains on the same line. If the speed supervision bulb is lit, that means tilt is enabled. With tilt enabled, the Pendolino can travel at the EPS speed displayed on the yellow speed boards on the West Coast mainline. And that concludes the Pendolino section of the video. If you'd like a generic guide to British railway signalling, a link to that is in the description below. It's now time to jump into the Class 350 Desiro. First of all, in front of the power brake controller, we're going to insert the master key. On the back wall of the cab, we'll make sure the battery is on. The West Coast mainline is entirely overhead power, so we'll hold AC power for 2 seconds. And just make sure the pantograph is raised by setting the pan to up. Let's now move the reverser to forwards. By default, the AWS safety system is isolated, so we're going to leave the seat, head over to the panel behind the second man's seat, and we'll switch the AWS from isolated to the normal position. The self-test alarm will sound, so we'll return to the seat and hit AWS acknowledge, which is Q on PC and B on Xbox. When en route, the AWS alarm will sound when you approach a restrictive signal, a speed limit ahead, or a route divergence. Hit AWS acknowledge to silence the alarm. Returning to the isolator panel, I'll set driver vigilance to normal. This alarm sounds both when you're not in the seat and en route when the power brake controller hasn't been moved for a period of time. Just press AWS acknowledge to silence the alarm. The last feature on that isolator panel behind the second man seat is the driver's safety device. It just makes sure the driver is in the seat and stops the train if they're not. An additional useful feature in the Class 350 is the driver reminder appliance. If the signal at the end of a platform is red, you can activate the DRA and it will stop the train from moving until the DRA is switched off again. The idea is that it reminds the driver to check the signal before departing. Now we'll set the headlights to either daylight or nightlight depending on the time of day we're driving. Door controls on the Class 350 are located on the right and left side of the driver's cab. The platforms on the left here will open the doors on the left side of the train. And the door close switch is located just below the open buttons on each side. The Class 350 has a combined power brake controller, so just move the lever to one of the 4 power notches to depart. There is a small lag between activating a power notch and the train moving as the brakes release. And that concludes our Class 350 tutorial. If you need a generic guide to British rail signalling, that can be found in the description below. Thank you for watching, I hope you found this useful. If you did, please drop a like, feel free to subscribe for regular sim content, take care and I'll see you next time.